On the other side of toxic Christianity, I found myself faced with one question. Now what? This podcast is about that question. We have conversations with folks who are asking themselves the same things. We're picking up the pieces of a fractured and fragmented faith. We're finding treasure in what the church called trash, beauty and solidarity in people and places we were told to fear, reject, and dismiss. I'm Tammy Spencer-Helms, and this is Life After 11. Okay, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this episode of Life After 11. I'm your host, Tammy Spencer-Helms, and I'm joined by an old dear friend, Micah, and their partner. And I'm going to have you introduce yourselves, who you are. We're going to talk about love and freedom and all the things. Welcome to the show. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. My name is Micah Rose.
And I'm Nayalisa.
I'm currently a teacher. This is like what's going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a marriage and family therapist. So
nice.
My own practice and helping the people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I love it. I'm so excited to have you guys on the show. Pronouns, just so I pronouns she, her, she, they,
her,
she, her.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So it's so good to have y'all. I want to talk a little bit about freedom. So some background for the folks who are listening. We definitely had another person on this season, Kevin from Mohart. Yes. So he talked about you on his episode. And so it's only right that I ask about that space that we shared.
Mm-hmm.
Circa, what was it? I was there in 2008 and left in like 2012, and you were there before I got there. So tell me a little bit about what got you involved in white evangelical space.
Yeah.
And then what it was that got you out. And I would love to hear from both of y'all on that.
Yeah. So I got an email from a friend, which is so strange. And she's like, hey, there's this media program. And I know like you really want to do media. You've been feeling it. You've been trying to do stuff. So, it's like a church and like a thing. So like, go check it out. And that's literally how I got in.
Wow.
Because before that, I was at a Presbyterian church.
Yeah.
That was a more light church. I don't know if you know what that is. But they're like very accepting, very affirming. And they actually went against church, like the church rules at the time. So I was there, I was a part of that church. And then I went and did mission year, which is like, again, very affirming. And, so I kind of stepped into this space because I was like, yeah, I kind of do want to do media. I mean, I need to move back to Kansas City because my sister was having babies and they didn't know me. And so I was like, okay, I need to get back in there. So yeah, that's kind of how I got in to the white evangelical space, like just because of my desire to do media.
That is so interesting because I will get into it. Now, Lisa, tell me about you. How did you get into it, or if you were in it at all?
Well, my mom, I really appreciated what she did. And I grew up in the inner city of Chicago, and we were very we were very inundated with my people, meaning I didn't really know about white evangelicalism, not aware about any of that. I was around Latinos, and that's kind of what I knew. And it wasn't until I went to Moody Bible Institute when I was, I was 18. And I mean, imagine you live in Chicago, right? Pretty diverse city. And you go to downtown Chicago, and I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be like home, right? No. And all I see is like a sea of white folk. But I started to assimilate because professors were starting to make fun of people who believed the things that I believed in or practiced the things that I did, or the things that I saw in church. They were labeling it as crazy, manipulative, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think through my schooling, so through Moody, and then I went to seminary at Trinity, is when I got like really steeped into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, prior to that though, like I just knew what I grew up in. So I had no idea there was this whole other world that influenced what I grew up in as well, right? There was portions of it in there. I didn't know there was a name for it.
For sure. I'm thinking about how that age, that 17, 18 age, that's like they go fishing for that age. They really, really do.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it that got you all out of sort of these spaces? What led to kind of was there like a clean break? What is faith looking like for y'all now?
So I went to Trinity and to do my master's of divinity, and in that, there was a class in particular which was very rare. It was a class on just Latino history in the church, and I started to realize like, oh crap. And so, but I had already committed to coming to Kansas City. That's how I came here. Was for a pastoral residency at an all-white church.
Mm-hmm.
So as I started to like dismantle and unassimilate, I'm heading to a sea of whiteness,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really know. And when I got here, they decided to pass a bylaw that women couldn't be pastors, although they called me a pastor, right? So that was the whole unraveling for me. It was a lot. There was a lot that happened. And then once I left there, it kind of was like F the church at that point. But then I went to do my master's in marriage and family therapy, and I got a lot of healing there, just a lot of my own wounds and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I went back to the church. So I was at this grassroots on the east side of Kansas City,
Okay.
multicultural kind of, all that. And so I went there, and they were like, oh my God, you can like run this church. You can like be the next, pastor, whatever. And I was there for a bit until I met Micah and until we started dating.
Wow. Okay.
And once we started dating, that was the unravel. Everything changed. And so it wasn't that clean of a break in that I made it clear, like, I can't further do this. Like, you're not for all people. And that's just my line that I'm not going to cross. But they like didn't tell anybody in the church, very like hushed about it, and then told stories about me to the congregation, like to the congregants of the church. And so very messed up in that way. So I've been on a journey of like fuck church and for a long time now. I mean, even right now, I would say I love that the theme is freedom, because the question of what do I bring or kind of what do I take, I would say freedom, like liberation. Because I was, even in all that moment, I was starting to see Jesus as a liberator rather than a savior. Because I just like, I don't get what the saving thing, like I don't vibe with that, but I can vibe with someone who's trying to liberate, right? Yeah. And so that's what I bring with me. If that's it though. I mean, even the Jesus thing, it's like, I mean, sure, okay, yeah, but I think the concept of freedom and people living in that freedom is something that I hold really dear.
Yeah, like I love to hear the ways that it's so funny because my favorite people on this side of things are the people who have receipts from that world and that space, because they're not sloppy with it. They kind of know what the things that are going to be thrown out about their character is. They know what passages are going to be used. And so it's so interesting to look back at life before and go, yeah, like this is how I'm one of the people I used to talk about, or I used to judge at least. So it wasn't so much of a like, so I didn't realize that it was, you all started dating and that caused the unraveling. That's interesting to me. So I'm going to switch. Micah Rose. So, okay, we were in I've been watching cult documentaries.
Oh, wow.
Right.
And not until this year. Okay, so actually Ellis, my partner, and I, we just watched what's the name of it? Oh, How to Become a Cult Leader, right? It's like it just came out on Netflix, and it was like the second season, the second episode, and I was like, wait a minute. I think maybe I was in a cult. And it's like, so this whole, I'm serious. Like I was yesterday years old when I finally said it out loud. Like, babe, I think that was an actual cult that I was in. Right. Like, and it was always really hard for me to navigate that because I had so much like, I had encounters with God there. There was a part of it that I was wrestling with, but I'm wondering about what it looks like to leave a place. And it sounds like you didn't even go because of the same reasons as me. So I kind of want to hear your story about what's your relationship to that type of ministry? What's your relationship to charismania and all those types of things? Because for me, it was like very hard to navigate, even getting to the place where I could say I was involved in a cult. I could say that it was unhealthy. I could say that I would never go back. I could say that I would caution a student to go out there, but I've never been able to say that until like last night. I'm looking at the ways that cults form, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's what this was. So your experience in that place, like, tell me a little bit about your experience there. You were doing media stuff, and you and I crossed paths a lot, but we weren't in the same sections and stuff. So like, tell me about what it was like for you to leave. Like, was it a hard decision? Like, how did that go?
Well, so I was told, so I did media, right? And I wrote a bunch of plays, I wrote musicals,
You did.
I wrote a film.
You did. All of it. You did.
Yes. There's some of those plays I look back and I'm like, okay. Like, there were some things happening here that I was clearly working on there.
Yeah.
But I'd done all this stuff, and then I was sort of told by the media department, hey, like, you're really great at what you do. We need you to keep doing this, but we want to pay you much less. And I was like, no. And then I went to a friend who happened to be in leadership there, and just kind of was like, can you hear our dog?
Yeah, I can, but it's okay. You might hear Beacon today. It's fine.
Okay. I'm like, she is whining for no reason. She's whining,
I know.
Her parents are right here on here. They want you to come back.
Right.
I get that life.
So I went to a friend who was a leader in the ministry and told them about it, and they said, okay, don't worry about it. You can leave that department and come over to my department and just do what you've been doing. And I was like, okay, great. And so I did that. And then there was a time to recommit. And I can't remember what it used to be called, but
Sacred Trust.
Sacred Trust. There it is. I was like, what was it called? It's so weird. I don't remember that. And that was in 2015. And it was time to re-up. And I was like, nah. And I just didn't do it. Like, I just was like, I'm not doing it. And so I got a job. And I started working for the Boys and Girls Club. I remained still connected, just not on staff. So I taught film and production still at their school, and then I taught at a local, like, I think it was like a K-12 Christian school. It was just like also affiliated with them. And I taught there for a couple of years. Well, I taught film for a couple of years, taught at that school for, I think, a year plus a semester. And as my life started to shift, meaning like I was like, oh, I'm going to take in my niece and she's going to come live with me. What does this look like? And I was like, let me go ahead and just go to where I want to be, which was in the city. And like, that's how I left. That's how I like sort of became unraveled. But I think truly the moment of me going, you know what, this is not for me, was when Trayvon Martin was killed.
Yeah. We were there at the same time.
That moment was like, I realized, I was like, wait a second, like, how, I thought y'all were pro-life. Like, I'm not understanding what this is. Oh, well, he shouldn't have, and he da-da-da-da. And then Ferguson happened. Did Ferguson happen after that?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, so then Ferguson happened, and I was like, wait, what? And I actually went with a leader to St. Louis, like the week after all the things happened with Michael Brown. And we're walking down by, I don't know if you remember the picture of the burned out QT.
Yes, I do.
We were standing there, and the police came up. They were like, hey, you can't stand here. And I said, first of all, and I started to like get real. And this leader was like, hey, we have to honor them. And I said, no, I have to be honored. And everyone just sort of looked at me, and the police were like, well, y'all can't like hang out here. And I was like, cool, we're not hanging out. We're like chatting and we're praying and we're walking around. And they were like, oh, okay, just keep it moving. And and that came out of like,
yes,
where?
yeah.
I didn't realize that was in there. I should have realized that was in there, but I didn't. And yeah, that was for me, those very significant murders by the police of Black people like started to like undo anything that I had learned at that place. It had started to undo like relationships, which I didn't even realize. I had to have a conversation with someone who is very dear to me and tell them, like, I'm not your token.
Right.
Like, I'm not. And then we like never spoke again.
It'd be like that.
Yeah. So
yeah,
there's that.
There is that. I remember, I mean, obviously we were there at the same time when that happened, but I remember, like, I write about it, but I also wrote about the solemn assembly we had around Obama's election. And that was one of the beginnings of there are really lots of like really, really sad white people around and everybody back home, like my family. Yeah. I mean, just like a solemn assembly over this. Are y'all serious? And so just just thinking back to that and thinking, oh my gosh, this stuff is so embedded in the system that you don't even, it takes something so jolting to kind of be like, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. But I do remember that about you. I remember that you always were like you had so much confidence. You were very regal. I do remember that. So I wondered if it was a similar situation or not. But here's what I really want to find out about now. I want to know how y'all met. I want to know the story. How did you meet? So to me, I just find that fascinating that the unraveling happened not there, but around like you being in love, which feels really weird to me. But tell me a little bit more if you don't mind.
No, yeah, I don't mind. I think the unraveling was probably more from my end than hers, as you can probably tell. Micah claims we met like when I came to Kansas City, which I have no recollection whatsoever. So I say we met, the way I say we met at the pastor's house, the church that I had like joined, the grassroots church. We met on his deck because that was during COVID. And everybody was doing the outside hangs, remember? And so that's where I met Micah. And I was like, okay, like whatever. It was like whatever. And so from that meeting on, we became friends. And really though, like the friendship was really around Micah would text me questions about like the Bible, and then I would like answer it and we shared a lot of the same sentiments, and that was a lot of the questions. So like that was the extent of our relationship. What do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And then
we also talked a lot of shit about people
100%,
that were doing
like
banana things.
Ridiculous.
We were like,
right?
Like,
why
like what? Like this is, no.
I love it.
And then one day we went to a dinner that we were having with a friend, and I think that was the first time like I walked in there and was like, like interesting. Like I actually like this not just like, oh, friend, but like, oh, like I remember what she was wearing and I remember all of that. And that's kind of how we started. I mean, we went through a lot of ups and downs. That I wasn't out yet. So I didn't come out until December, and we started dating in June. So I hadn't been out yet. So you can imagine the fear that I had, just all of that comes with it. Then, you know, I'm someone, when you get to know me, I don't live in hiding very well, and I'm not a very well I'm authentic. Like I can't not be authentic. And so that we were like, nobody knew we were dating, but that didn't last long. Because I just couldn't like keep it low anymore. And so then I started to tell people. I told the pastors and all of them, and they didn't respond well. My family did, but they didn't.
Really?
Yeah, which is like, you wouldn't think, but they did. My family, like till this day, has been really great. But that's from my side of just like why we met and what happened. And I don't know. More to add.
I mean, truly, we met like so far before this.
No.
The first time that she said that we met, but it was the first time that we like talked to each other.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that. But no, that's like pretty much it. Like I had sort of been done with church as I was going to a local church that's really well known, and basically got asked to leave because I talked about race stuff too much. So I was like, I mean, that was in 2017, and I was like devastated and was like, I'm done. Like this whole church thing is done. Like there's nothing I have to offer it, and there's nothing that they have to offer me. And so when I started watching, so the pandemic happened, and I started when we were quarantined, I started watching church on Facebook.
Yeah.
And my church, that I call my home church, my church in New York, they were having services, and I was like, oh, like look at them, they're singing their songs, and they're so cute. There was like all these like, I mean, they're getting, you know, much older, and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at so and so, and they, oh my gosh, whoever that is has a baby, and you know, whatever, right? And so, like one day I was watching it and I didn't catch the ending, and it just rolled onto another service.
Yeah.
And it happened to be this church, and I knew the people who ran it or who were the pastors, and I was like, oh, let me watch. And at this point I was already out. I was like, well, I'm not doing the church thing, so I don't have to hide. So I'm gonna be out. And yeah, that's kind of, I mean, I joined the church and was like in love, just like these are real people talking about real things. And I loved every time that Naya would preach. I was like, that girl better preach. Like I was just like in my house by myself, just like yelling.
Yes.
Preach. For real. And you know, I was like, oh, I love her. She's so great. She's so great. And then we had the opportunity to connect. And then we were in some different community programs together. And yeah, and then the rest of it just happened very similarly. Like we were at this dinner, and I actually wasn't super paying attention to her because I was like, well, she wouldn't be into me. And she's like, nah, I don't think she's like ready to be out. So like, I'm gonna just let her be. And then she sent me a text
during the dinner
that I didn't catch because I was trying to be present. I was like,
come on, game. Okay.
I know. I was like,
okay.
I was like, I got it.
Hey.
My past self when we left, because she didn't text me back until we left.
Oh my God.
I'm in the car though, like, what do you do now? Like, do you text or whatever? And then she texted me back, and I was like, let's go.
Awesome. Oh my gosh.
And I had just received like a bunch of clothes in the mail because, you know, like, you can't go shopping. And so I was like, you know, medicating with retail therapy. And I was like, do you want to watch me try on clothes?
Like,
and so
sure. She
I
sent me a bunch of pictures of dresses. And I was like, you look like an old lady here. I don't know about this one.
And then we just kept talking.
And
then she went to bed because she was going out of town the next day. And that whole week that she was gone, I was like, is this my person? I think this might be my person. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And then I found out how old she was. And that was the whole thing.
Yeah. We're 12 years apart?
Yeah, 12 years apart. Yeah. I'm 12 years older than her. And I was like, that's too much. Like, I'm like robbing the cradle. I mean, it was like a whole thing.
I mean, you kind of are. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you. But then,
oh my gosh.
It's like, I don't know, it all worked out. There was some like, you know, some things that happened in the middle of all of that. But like for us, we stayed really connected. We stayed very like, I don't know, just like we decided this was going to be our thing. We were going to be open and honest with each other. Like I would go to her house or she'd come over to mine, and I like cook dinner every night. And
we would just sit on the porch and drink whiskey and cry a lot because we were just like, I mean, I was at that point, there's a point hopefully in your life where you just don't have time, right, for the bullshit of like, and I think we were at that spot. And yeah, we just had really deep, hard conversations really in the beginning.
Yeah.
That really, I think, set it up.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so I was thinking about how how do I want to? So it's interesting to me because we've had a couple of people on the show talking about dating and talking about love, which is so interesting because it just didn't come up in the first season. But you know, I think about how so many people are kept from meeting their person because there are so many rules around what you can and cannot do and who you can and cannot love. And I'm thinking about, because I can tell I met you at CCDA, Naya.
Okay.
I think it was 2 years ago. I met you, and I think y'all were dating, or maybe had just started dating. I can't remember which
The
one.
one that was here in
That was
Kansas City.
here?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We were dating, yeah.
So it's like, you see people and you're like, wow, like these people are matched. They go, and I see it around like my partner's chosen family, my chosen family as well, like from Gallaudet, the way that the relationships, because there's not all of that compulsion, I guess. I mean, you choose someone that suits you, right?
Mhm.
Like, and it's I haven't experienced a relationship on such a level where you do have someone to talk about spiritual things. You have your best friend, you have the person you drink with, the person you laugh with, your lover, your partner. I mean, like, just all of these things that, like, there are so many people in relationships right now who were given a roadmap to something that was not that relationship was meant, that they were meant to serve another person, right? Like, so how do you all navigate like relationship? Are you, so for instance, for us, we did not, babe, I'm about to tell them, we moved in beforehand. And so, like, because I was like, hell no, I've been married. I will not do that again. Like, I've been married. And so we moved in after a little bit. And I think what was so beautiful about that is like the engagement, the marriage, all of it came after. So when we made covenant, we meant it. Like, because we wanted to make covenant before God. Like, there was no other reason to do it. It wasn't like we were waiting on a pastor, because they sure as hell weren't going to do it. It
Right.
wasn't like we were waiting to do anything, because purity culture is a joke.
Right.
So, like, it was like when we made the covenant before God, it was so deliberate because of that, because all of those like arbitrary restrictions were taken off. What's been your experience in that, in terms of freedom, in terms of relationship?
Yeah, we
did the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, same thing.
So
cool.
But
well,
right.
Yeah,
We understand.
We understand.
But I think it got to the point where I was literally like in tears every time she had to leave, or I had to leave her house, like full on tears. And I'm like not a crier. That's not really what I do. But I would be like, okay, stop it. But I'd be like, why can't you just stay over here? And she'd be like, oh, my cat. And she's like,
it was really my cat, y'all. Like, for real.
No, really was.
Like,
really.
I couldn't, because here's the deal. Once we moved the cat in, I never left.
It's a wrap.
I never left it once we moved the cat in.
Now, look, I'm about to bring my cat, so I need to know. It's like, right.
You brought him over. It was like
January 1st.
January 1,
2022.
Yeah.
And we were just trying to see like how he would get along with the dog. Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're kind of seeing it. And then he just
was fine. He loved
made it his home. And we were like, all right, bud, like, this is what we're doing. And the dog didn't care. Like, she's just like real, like, goofy and ridiculous, and loves him. And like, they chase each other around the house. And so it became very like apparent, like, oh, I guess either you're moving in or I'm taking care of your cat.
Yeah, and I would say, like, around freedom, I remember we actually went to therapy really, like, pretty quick.
So did we.
Yeah, okay. But what was interesting is when we would tell people, they were like, oh, like, is it that serious? Like, are you, like, going to get married? I was like, what about just wanting a healthy relationship? Like, what about that, right? But again, all these rules of, oh, you only go to couples therapy because you're going to do premarital, and then after premarital, right? And I was like, I just remember, right? People were like, oh my God. And it's like, yeah, who cares? We're going. So we did that too. And that was actually very freeing, I think.
Yeah.
Being able to be in that space and do that early on. And I recommend it 100%.
I do too. I mean, I think about, so I'm married. It's so interesting because my partner has their LCSW, so they do acute psychotherapy,
Yep.
and so we started doing therapy pretty early on too, just because, hello, I was in an abusive marriage. I had a kid. Like, there was a lot to step into. And I think what people don't realize is, like, what's been so cool about this is, like, we are, now that you're in like a safe enough environment, there are parts of myself that I'm getting to know that I just never had the safety and the security and like the freedom to be that vulnerable, to get to know myself, like coming into being non-binary and things like that. But it's so funny because you watch someone like become themselves. It's such a beautiful like station in another person's life, to watch them. Who would they be if they were free and knew they were loved, right?
Mhm.
Like, you get to kind of witness this. And so I really love meeting couples that are like, yeah, we just want a healthy relationship. Like, why? Because, there's parts of ourselves that are, have, we cope because of trauma in the past, we cope because of lies we've heard about ourselves, about the world. Like, I mean, that stuff is real. And so, like, in our relationship, we name the egos and all of that. Like,
Yeah.
so now my partner can call out, like, if I'm acting a certain way, like, this is your ego acting, and they'll call the name of the actual person out. Because I think it's so beautiful to say, like, as I go on this journey of knowing who I am, I'm bound to bump into pockets of myself that might cause harm, just because I don't know where trauma resides. I don't know what kind of buttons, all the buttons we know about, but there might be buttons that, like, hey, I'm responding. We talk about like broken toes, like, if you're dancing with someone and you step on their foot, it's not a big deal. If they have a broken toe, like a small little step could be like a really, really big deal. And so it's been so beautiful to like be like, hey babe, I think I have a broken toe there. So I like overreacted, but like, here's where it is. And so you have someone that knows you, that's helping you kind of become who you are. And Nayalisa, when you were talking about like theologically, I could tell that theologically some stuff is shifted for you. And to me, it's like, it's the same. It's like, oh my gosh, like, this is resurrection. Like, this is becoming whole. Like, right, like letting wounds heal and scar over and becoming whole. To me, that feels more like resurrection, and what it means to live a fully glorious life, in the midst of a world that is very thorny. And I know that's, we had Adam. Do y'all know Adam Evers? He started the Believer app.
No.
He was on the show too, and he was talking about how it's just so interesting because queer people can say, this is what hard feels like. Like, we know how to live, to be fully in love and fully alive, and then just be having like hard stuff, just like shit happening,
Right.
and hurtful shit happening,
Mhm.
like, in the midst of that. And I do think that there's a way. So I'm hoping that you're still preaching now, Lisa, because like, there is something that I think queer theologians in particular bring to the table. And you're a person of color, so you've got all those intersections, and so do I, right? Like, you can bring something to bear upon, I think, faith and spirituality that just wasn't there before, because people are having to navigate tension in their actual being. Like, I, in and of myself, I'm in tension, right? Like, I am gray. Like, what does it mean to be non-binary? It means that I'm not that or that, I'm this. And it's been so interesting. I just went on a tangent there, but I got hype listening to y'all talk about
Well,
like
I
healthy relationships.
yeah, I got hyped though, because right now Micah and I are learning about, talk about broken toes and where trauma resides, and
Yeah,
our first year of marriage, we got hit with tragedy,
yeah.
right, with Micah losing her sister, and then we inheriting kids,
Mhm,
just not even a year into marriage. And
mhm,
I think if we didn't have that foundation, right, of like
mhm,
what we did, and we're going to therapy and
mhm,
all of those things, that safety and security, I mean,
mhm.
I don't know if we could have outlasted this tragedy,
Yes.
right? But
Yes.
even in this tragedy, learning lots about myself, but then learning together, like, oh,
Yes.
this is how this impacts, or this is what happened.
Mhm,
So it's,
mm,
but all that to say, I think having been liberated right from that whiteness of what
Mhm.
marriage is supposed to look like, I
Mhm.
think it gives us the space to kind of figure out what does this look like for us.
Yeah, it's just so I mean I'm getting to know you and we'll get to know you more, but knowing Micah and knowing like you guys probably have a quality ass family. Like, it's just like you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So it's not like it's Micah. It's Micah Rose. Like, you know what I mean? Like, of course. But it's so interesting to think about raising kids. It was the same. My partner inherited a 2-year-old.
Mhm.
Like right off the bat, a 2-year-old who had seen a lot of trauma and had been a part of an abusive, marriage, like all of those things. And what does it mean to help her attach healthily to me and to my partner and all of those things? It makes it so that like the hardship that comes with just being in relationships, it feels really good to be free to love who you actually love without all that. You know what I'm saying? I just can't imagine being stuck in a relationship because I felt like I had to do, well, I can imagine it. I can't imagine doing that again.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really excited about the ways that families are diverse and the way that families are growing and like what the kids in these families are going to be like. It's just exciting to me.
Mhm.
I'm going on tangents. So
I love it. I love it.
I'm
Good.
gonna ask y'all. I'm gonna have you both back probably separately because I have different seasons in mind. But I'm gonna ask y'all the last three, and each
Okay.
of you can answer it like on your own. But the first one is, what are you bringing from the rubble? Because I assume you're spiritual at least, right? Like,
I would say.
yeah, yeah. I'm wearing a light jacket. I say called Christianity. I mean, I will take the bitch off with
Yeah.
That
That
part.
part.
with no shame. Oh no, 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 that's not me. um, but I mean, I still have love for the ethics and the way of Jesus, and so I guess I wear the light jacket. So before that, I was wearing a boulder called white evangelicalism.
Mhm.
What I brought with me was my love for Jesus, my love for like reading gospels and scriptures and stuff like that. So what are you bringing from the rubble? What are you binging? Which, by the way, man, these cult documentaries, they hitting. And then and then some words to live by. So whenever you're ready in whatever order you want to go in.
Sure, I can go. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but I am bringing this idea of liberation, and how I think the Godhead, the universe, however you want to, whatever, I think it is always bending towards us being liberated,
Mm-hmm.
particularly and starting always with the marginalized.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really love that like idea and really love that reality. Um, I don't know if I don't know. I'm like still in my whole phase of like, do I am Christian? Do I believe in this? But what I do know and what I do bring with me, and I think it's been from my mom, and usually it's from the faith of the elders, right? That carry
Mm-hmm.
you. But my mom, anytime something happens or anytime like we're going through a hard time, she just has this incredible belief that like we'll get through it and like it'll be okay. And I think I actually hold on to that. That yeah, I mean, I act like it, and Micah can tell you, like, I get anxious or I get nervous or I like get upset, but I think deep down, I know that I'll be okay, and I get that from her,
Wow.
and so I think I bring that with me.
That's really good.
Um, as far as what I'm binging right now, I'm binging on Queen Bee. Honestly, like Beyonce,
Hey.
right now, I'm getting ready for the concert.
Oh
But
no, are y'all going?
yeah,
Yes.
oh yeah, she's coming to Kansas City in October, and
It's the finale.
we been got her tickets, and
Oh my
but for real though, like she is just channeling a very inner like strong woman that I'm just holding on to, especially, and I don't know, so I've been really like bumping to her music. And also I really love bourbon, so I've been
What
drinking.
kind?
Woo, girl. I don't know. I like a lot.
Have you tried Uncle Nearest though?
Yes.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Love
Yes.
it.
Uncle Nearest. Buffalo Trace. Right now we're drinking on Templeton Rye. It's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all the bourbon. And then
so real quick, because on this, I love whiskey. On that, Suntory, it's a Japanese whiskey. Have you had it? It comes in a white, it's a square bottle, kind of like the Uncle Nearest bottle. It's called Suntory. I'm telling y'all, game changer. Like, it's really, really good. I'll send you a picture when we get off.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Yes, please. And
give us some words to live by.
Yes. The words to live by is don't sacrifice your integrity. And I think that's actually what led me to leave the church and all of that, because I couldn't be somewhere that didn't line up with my values. And as a therapist, I think that's my biggest thing with folks. And that's where you can find the cognitive dissonance sometimes, is when they say they value something but are acting different. And then you're like, well, what's leading into that, right? And you kind of dissect and figure that out. And I think for me, I'm very big on integrity. Yeah. And I, like, even if it means that I am eating ramen noodles, like, I'm not going to sacrifice it. It's not. Because I've already had to sacrifice so much that I'm done with that.
Indeed.
So that's what I would say.
This is like that hang in the air, man. Wow.
Right. Preacher, right? Like I told you, preacher.
Indeed.
Truly. So for me, I'll go backwards. So words to live by. I was thinking about this before and I was like, what do I don't know what I'm but while Naya was talking, I was like, oh, love is a choice. And I was like, I mean, my dad was like really adamant about like understanding what you enter into when you're going to be in a relationship. And he was like, you got all this baggage. You gotta be with somebody who will carry your baggage with you, and you have to be willing to carry theirs. And I was like, oh yeah. As I like sort of tried to be in all these relationships and they all failed. And it wasn't until truly I maybe got into like my 40s and I was like, oh, this is what he was talking about. Choose to love someone. Choose it. Like, it's not a feeling. Because I'm telling you, that feeling goes away. It's like fleeting. But that choice, when you decide, I know she's like, let me out. But when you decide, that's some freedom right there. Binging Bob's Burgers.
Bob's Burgers, huh?
Burgers. I love it so much. I was eating lunch today and I was like, let me just watch the last little part of this episode I already watched. I've seen all the episodes. I just like started the episode and wanted to finish. Like, it's a mess.
Wow. Awesome.
I still love The Office. But my heart right now is with Bob and his burgers.
Bob and his burgers. I watched Parks and Rec for the first time ever, like this past year. And I liked it. I loved it. Oh my gosh. I liked it a lot. Yeah. I liked it a lot. Y'all have been like incredible. And I think that it's just been so beautiful to watch and to have you talk about your love story, talk about your own freedom. Because I think the people that are listening, I think they're navigating, either they've just left, they're thinking about leaving, or they're trying to find something to troll me with. And this is helpful for them. So either way, I think, go ahead.
No, I was thinking like, the thing that because you said the listeners, right? The thing that reminded me of is like, the thing that I still hold on to is Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount. Like, I'm telling you, my life is so much better because I'm like, oh, I'm all in.
Yes.
Love your neighbor, bet I'm here. When somebody curses you, bless them. Yep. I'm here. And I'm watching it unfold in my life in a way that, like, lots of people would say, like, oh, like you're manifesting or you're what, like, no, I'm being kind to people who are not kind to me. I am giving of myself. I'm giving of my time and my talents and my money to things to people and to causes that enter the margins. Like we cannot do anything. Like we can't win if we're not centering the margins.
Come on.
I'm all about that win. And I'm like, okay, how do I make my society better? How do I make my story, or, you know, the people who are involved in my story, right? How do we make life better for each other?
Oh my gosh, yes.
And that's the thing for Naya and I that we hold on to, and we do it. I mean, it's not always easy at all. I mean, especially when we brought in my nieces and nephew. Like, I mean, I was like done. Like I could barely do anything, and Naya picked up all of the slack. I mean, I think I was probably carrying like 3%, and she was carrying 97. And it was truly, it's like the Sermon on the Mount that like holds me in, that keeps me safe, that gives me that like understanding that, yeah, at the end of the day, when you care for others, when you are kind, when you center the margins, when you give bread, the least of these, like that's it. That's life. That's it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Woo! I'm gonna end it right there. I'm ending it right there.
Thank you for listening. To put your money in your heart is donate to Subculture Inc. and clear the path for Black students today.